In the shadowed depths of the drifting starship silence, a single, forgotten chamber lay untouched for over 2 millennia. Silent, sealed, and dark, it floated as if frozen in time. Encased within its metallic shell, an alien woman slept, her form suspended in a stasis pod, her name, Lyra, preserved in ancient symbols inscribed above her resting place. In a shipwrecked vessel that had long lost its way through the vast starways, she waited for a hand to wake her. And after 2,000 years, that hand would soon come. Jace strode through the narrow corridors of the ship with a pulse of adrenaline surging through him. The hum of his own vessel, the vigilant sun, had faded as he'd made his way deeper into this derelict ruin. For years, Jace had heard rumors of the silence, a relic from a forgotten time, lost far beyond any known star charts. Now he was here, a lone human in a realm that had long abandoned even the concept of a living soul. But there was something else. Something he hadn't expected. Something he couldn't quite explain. It was as though he'd sensed a presence here, something watching from afar, beyond the layers of metal, wires, and ancient halls that marked the ghostly hull of the ship. Finally, Jace reached a chamber that felt somehow different from the others. An eerie hum pervaded the room, vibrating through the air as if whispering secrets of a world long gone. His steps slowed as his eyes fell on the single pod in the center of the room, a pod that looked far more advanced than any stasis chamber he'd ever encountered. Light glowed faintly from within it, casting shadows that danced across the walls. And through the transparent surface, he saw her. She was like nothing he had ever seen. Her skin glowed a soft, silver hue, reflecting the dim light with an almost unearthly beauty. She lay in peaceful stillness, long, flowing hair that shimmered in faint luminescent waves around her. Her features were delicate yet sharp, undeniably different from any human, yet somehow captivating. Curiosity took over as he touched the console on the side of the pod, deciphering the ancient symbols etched into its surface. He could only guess at what each glyph meant, but one command seemed clear: awaken. His finger hesitated only a moment before pressing it. A low hum filled the room, rising slowly in pitch as lights began to pulse along the pod's surface. Jace took a step back, his heart pounding as he watched the figure within stir. Her eyes slowly opened, revealing a shade of violet that seemed to pierce through the dimness. Her gaze met his, and he felt an inexplicable jolt, as though the very fabric of reality shifted in that instant. Lyra blinked, disoriented as she emerged from her long, dark slumber. Her mind slowly pieced together fragments of memories, images of her people, her home, a distant world now obscured by the haze of time. But something was different. The room felt unfamiliar. There was an energy, a warmth, that she had not sensed in millennia. And then her eyes focused on him, the figure standing just beyond her stasis pod. He was male. She recognized that immediately, yet it struck her as strange. Her people had long since evolved beyond the necessity of males, relying on advanced genetic technology for reproduction. Males had been consigned to legend, stories passed down in whispers as myths. Yet here, before her, stood a man, flesh and blood. She rose from the pod, her movements slow as she adjusted to her surroundings. Her gaze remained locked on him, studying every aspect of this strange, unexpected presence. His features were rougher than those of her people, strong and angular, yet there was a softness in his eyes, a warmth that surprised her. She felt something stir within her, a sensation she could not name. "Who are you?" Her voice was soft, uncertain, as though testing itself after centuries of silence. Jace hesitated, unsure of how much she would understand. "My name is Jace. I found your ship. I thought maybe someone could still be alive here." Alive, she repeated the word as if savoring it, as if the very concept felt foreign to her. "I am Lyra," she said finally, her name flowing like a melody. "How long has it been?" "More than 2,000 years, Jace replied. "Your ship was lost, stranded in the outer void." Lyra absorbed his words, the weight of the years sinking into her mind. 2,000 years. The world she had known, the people she had once cared for, the civilization she had belonged to, all of it lost, vanished like a star flickering out in the depths of space. But here was a new life, a being that shared a part of what she had once been. And he was unlike anything she had known. In the days that followed, Jace helped Lyra adjust to the new reality of her life. They moved through the corridors of the silence, restoring fragments of power, reviving systems that had lain dormant. Lyra showed him the advanced technology of her people, the sophisticated designs and intricate mechanisms that had once driven her civilization. Their conversations flowed slowly at first, as Lyra's understanding of Jace's language grew, each word a new link between them. She learned of humanity, of a race that had risen, survived, and grown. Jace, in turn, listened to stories of Lyra's people, the Lyrethians, an ancient race that had once flourished in harmony with the stars. But there was an unspoken tension between them, a subtle current that neither could fully grasp. For Lyra, it was a strange and bewildering sensation, a feeling she had only read about in ancient texts. She found herself drawn to him, to the warmth in his voice, the steadiness of his presence. The sight of his face became familiar, a comfort she hadn't expected. And for Jace, it was something he could barely admit to himself. Lyra was a mystery, a being from another world, another time, yet somehow she felt like the missing piece he had been searching for in the depths of space. One day, as they stood together in the observation deck, watching distant stars glimmer beyond the ship's window, Lyra broke the silence. "Jace," she began, her voice hesitant, "I was told that my people once shared bonds, connections with others." Her gaze turned to him, and he felt the weight of her words, the vulnerability behind them. "I thought such things were forgotten. But now, with you, I feel something I cannot explain." Jace felt his heart race, but he kept his voice steady. "You're not alone, Lyra. Whatever this feeling is, I feel it too." He reached out, his hand gently covering hers. Her skin was cool, smooth like polished silver, but the touch sent warmth through him. Their gazes locked, and in that moment, centuries of separation, of alienation and loss, seemed to dissolve. Lyra felt something within her awaken, a longing she had never known, a desire that bridged the chasm between them. And as their hands entwined, she realized that the myth, the legend of bonds and connection, was not lost. It had only been waiting for the right moment, for the right being to revive it. The days turned into weeks, and their connection deepened. They explored the ship together, unlocking secrets from both their pasts, each discovery drawing them closer. Jace shared stories of Earth, of the wild, beautiful landscapes, the warmth of the sun on his skin, the vibrant energy of humanity. And in turn, Lyra spoke of her home world, of the crystalline cities that once gleamed under her planet's twin suns, of the melodies that echoed through her people's lives. One evening, as they sat together under the faint glow of a restored console, Lyra looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and wonder. "Jace, what does it mean to love?" The question caught him off guard. He paused, searching for the right words. "It's when you care for someone so deeply that their happiness, their safety, means more than your own. When you're with them, you feel whole, complete." Lyra absorbed his words, and for the first time, she felt she truly understood. She leaned closer to him, her hand gently resting on his face, her touch soft yet filled with a newfound confidence. "Then, is this what it feels like?" she whispered. Jace's heart ached with a mixture of joy and sadness. He knew that Lyra would never fully belong to his world, and he would never fully belong to hers. Yet in this moment, they were together, two souls bound by an inexplicable bond that transcended their differences. "Yes," he whispered back, his voice filled with warmth. "This is what it feels like." And as their foreheads touched, their hearts beat as one, bridging the gap between worlds, between time, between all that had kept them apart. The stars outside continued their eternal dance, oblivious to the passage of time, to the lives and loves that flickered and faded within their vast expanse. But in that forgotten chamber of the silence, The bond between a human man and an ancient alien woman marked a new beginning, a testament to the enduring power of connection, of love that defied both distance and time. For Lyra and Jace, they had found each other in the void, and that alone was enough. After weeks of exploration, Jace and Lyra had unlocked more of the Silence's systems. Power surged through the ship, illuminating once dark corridors and reviving ancient technology. Despite the unknown dangers lurking within the labyrinthine structure, Jace found solace in Lyra's presence, and the fear of the unknown faded as their bond deepened. However, both knew that restoring the ship might mean facing even greater secrets and possible dangers. One day, as they walked through the ship's engineering bay, Lyra stopped suddenly, her gaze fixed on a section of the control panel that had lit up with a soft green light. She approached it, her fingers brushing across the surface as symbols began to appear. Jace recognized the familiar glyphs of Lyra's language, though he couldn't read them. "What is it?" he asked, watching her expression shift from curiosity to concern. "It's a map," Lyra said softly, tracing the symbols. "A map of my people's colonies spread across the stars." She stared at it for a moment, then looked back at Jace. This ship was part of a fleet that was exploring regions of space our people had only recently discovered. But it seemed something went wrong, something catastrophic. That's why this ship ended up stranded here. Her finger hovered over a particular point on the map, one glowing with a faint but steady light. "This is my homeworld," she whispered, the name of her planet spilling from her lips like a forgotten melody. "The system shows signs of activity. It's faint, but it's there." Jace felt a strange mixture of excitement and caution. "So, your people, there might still be others out there?" Lyra nodded slowly, her expression conflicted. "Yes. If they've survived, they may have even evolved into something beyond what I once knew. Or, perhaps," she trailed off, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and fear. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We can go there, Lyra. We can find out the truth together. If there's any way to get this ship operational, we'll make it happen." Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly to reactivate the ship's propulsion and navigation systems. Lyra's advanced understanding of her people's technology allowed her to access systems that Jace could barely comprehend. They encountered obstacles at every turn, corroded circuits, unstable power cores, and data caches with fragmented information, but they faced each one together, drawing strength from each other's determination. Then, on the eve of what they hoped would be their launch, Lyra activated a final section of the ship's mainframe. A voice, ancient, melodic, and haunting, filled the room. It was an emergency recording, a message from the Silence's captain, preserved from thousands of years ago. To those who hear this message, the captain's voice began, tinged with despair. "Know that the Silence was once a proud vessel of the Lyrethian fleet, on a mission to bridge worlds. But we encountered something, a life form of pure energy, vast and incomprehensible. It turned on us, consuming our power, feasting on the life of our crew until only a few of us remained. To protect our people, we locked the entity in the core of this ship, trapping it as we drifted into the void." Jace and Lyra exchanged a worried glance. The entity the captain described sounded like something beyond their understanding and beyond their control. The recording continued. "If you're hearing this, be warned. The entity still lurks within, bound but not defeated. To wake the ship's engines risks freeing it. If you are not prepared, do not attempt to continue. For if it awakens fully, it will seek new life to sustain itself." The message ended, leaving a chilling silence in its wake. Jace swallowed, feeling a cold weight settle in his chest. "Lyra, if we activate the ship, we might release that thing." She nodded, her face pale. "Yes. But we're also the only ones who can stop it. If it's a creature of energy, then perhaps we could contain it long enough to reach my homeworld. My people's technology might have evolved to counter it." Jace looked into her eyes, seeing both determination and fear. "If we do this, there's no turning back. We may not survive." Lyra's gaze softened, her hand reaching out to touch his. We've already crossed the boundaries of time and space. I would rather face the unknown with you than drift alone in the dark." Jace's heart swelled with both pride and an unspoken love. "Then let's make sure this thing stays locked down." Together, they developed a plan. Lyra would reprogram the stasis pod, converting its containment field into a makeshift prison for the entity. Once they powered up the engines, the creature would stir, but the modified field could, if they were quick, trap it long enough to reach Lyra's homeworld. They began the countdown, standing side by side in the control room as the engines roared to life for the first time in centuries. The ship shuddered, lights flickering as systems long dormant began to wake. But as they engaged the final power sequence, a dark energy filled the room, a swirling, shapeless mass of light and shadow, like a storm contained within itself. The entity had awakened. Jace felt a chill run down his spine as the creature surged toward them, tendrils of energy crackling through the air. Lyra raised her hand, activating the stasis containment field, which began to glow with a brilliant white light, pulsing in sync with the entity's movements. The creature resisted, its energy colliding against the containment field with a force that shook the room. Jace grabbed onto the console for support, shouting over the hum of the engines. "Lyra, it's breaking through. We need more power." Lyra gritted her teeth, focusing all her will on maintaining the containment field. But the entity's strength was overwhelming, and she felt her energy draining as she fought to hold it back. Just as she felt herself faltering, Jace took her hand, his presence anchoring her, lending her strength. "Together," he whispered, his voice steady and warm. With renewed determination, Lyra poured every ounce of her will into the containment field. The entity writhed, but it began to weaken, its form dimming as the stasis pod's field absorbed its energy. Finally, with a final burst of light, the entity was forced back into the containment, its power bound within the pod once more. They collapsed, exhausted but victorious. The silence shuddered forward, its engines propelling them through the stars. As they drifted closer to Lyra's homeworld, Jace and Lyra spent their time together, their connection deepening with each passing day. They spoke of the future, of possibilities they had never considered before, of what it would mean to face whatever lay ahead as partners. At last, the ship reached orbit around Lyra's planet. The sight before them was breathtaking. Towering crystalline spires reflected the light of twin suns, casting rainbows across sprawling forests and shimmering seas. Lyra's eyes filled with tears as she took in the beauty of her world, a beauty she had thought lost forever. But as they descended, they noticed that her people had indeed evolved. Beings with elongated, radiant forms greeted them, their expressions filled with awe and curiosity. Lyra was embraced as one of their own, and Jace was welcomed with open arms as her companion. Together, they shared their story, and the people rejoiced to learn that their lost ancestor had returned. The silence was dismantled, its ancient technologies studied and revered, and the entity within was transferred into a permanent containment, safely kept as a reminder of the trials their people had faced. In time, Jace and Lyra settled on her homeworld, building a life that honored both their worlds. They became a symbol of unity, of love that transcended distance, time, and even species. And whenever they looked at the stars, they remembered the journey that had brought them together, a journey through the darkness that had given way to light. Years later, as Jace and Lyra watched their children play beneath the twin suns, they knew their story would be told for generations to come, a tale of two souls who had defied the very fabric of space and time, a story that began with an awakening on an ancient, silent ship and ended in a world reborn with hope.